Access Live, Kevin Rankin.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here on an incredible Friday afternoon. We are just at the beginning of Memorial Day weekend and talk about making memories. This is going to be a good one. Before we get started, I have to be thankful of my sponsors at 5-Star Guitars. 5-Star Guitars is based in Beaverton, Oregon, which means they have no sales tax. They have incredible selection of guitars. They've got repairs. They've got lessons from professionals like Jennifer Batten. And if you want to learn from the pros, go to 5starguitars.com/allaccesslive and enter the promo code below, allaccess15. Everything you see there, you're going to save 15% on top of the deal that there's no sales tax. So you can save a bunch of money. You can learn how to be almost as good as the boss of my next guest. Also, we want to thank my friend Geoff Metts, who's going to be co-hosting this event today. If you're visiting this link from any place else other than YouTube, I would love it if you go to the link below, youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. You'll be notified about upcoming guests, and I've got some good ones, but none greater than my next guest. I want to thank, first of all, my host, Geoff Metts, and the incredible Tom Weber. Tom Weber, how you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm getting by. How are you, Kevin?
Living the dream, man. This is what it's all about for us. You know what I didn't lead into with the introduction was who your boss was. You want to have a little bit of a background? You want to give a background about who you've worked with in the past, and most notably?
Well, it's been a long road for me. I started as an audio guy with Bob Seger in 1974, maybe, okay. And ended up being a guitar guy over the decades, working with first guitar gig was Blessed Union of Souls out of Cincinnati, pop band that was pretty successful. Went to Ronnie Dio and Billy Corrigan and Poison and Nine Inch Nails, Reba McEntire, and ultimately Ed Van Halen.
Oh my, that's not a bad pedigree.
I'm liking that. It's okay.
Let's go back a little bit. In that lineup of bands, of course, Blessed Union of Souls. You mentioned working with Dio. We had Rudy Sarzo on not that long ago. Actually, we talked about the legacy of Dio and what that meant to him. He talked about working with, of course, the greatest, with Randy Rhoads, working with Ozzy, and his time in Dio. Talked about him being one of the most real, down-to-earth humans on the planet. And was that the same experience with you when you were working with Ronnie?
Absolutely. Ronnie was the kind of guy that you could run into on stage, before showtime, and he would be focused, but he'd be Ronnie. You run into him at the hotel in the lounge and sit and have a couple of drinks with him and talk like the music business didn't necessarily exist. And it was I really enjoyed my time with him. He was a big smile to be around. I had a great time with Ron.
And who was on guitar at that point in the band?
Craig Goldie
was
playing guitar at that point.
Another sort of unsung hero. He gets swept under the behind the scenes because guys like Vivian Campbell have all the notoriety, but Craig Goldie was unbelievable. Right. Okay. Well, so then, let's go through the list. I mean, you mentioned, we talked about the Cult before we went online,
right.
And,
Billy Duffy is one of my favorite guitar players. Billy's got a command of tone and saying something with the guitar. His vibrato style is as individual as a B.B. King. And it's really a pleasure to listen to him play, especially live. The band is huge live, and he manhandles a guitar into what it needs to be for the Cult, and you just kind of sit there and just shake your head and you go, yeah, that's exactly what it's supposed to be, and it sounds really good.
He seems like he came from a punk rock style. I mean, really, he's just got that kind of attitude. You can see that. There's nothing
Yeah.
tentative, right? There's
No,
nothing,
not
yeah.
at all. Not at all. He hammers it home and does an amazingly good job of it. He's one of my favorite guitar players to listen to.
Right. I'm not going to continue to talk over you, Geoff, but I do have a Billy Duffy experience that Tom and I just chatted about before you hopped on. A mutual friend of ours, also on the Cult tour, my good friend Adrian Ost, who was my guest yesterday, at that point was drum tech for the Cult, I believe at that point with John Tempesta. Is that right? And he said, man, first of all, Tom Weber, greatest guy on the planet, taught me everything I knew about guitar teching. And he said, you want to see what a MacGyver that guy is? He told me about this experience, about this vintage guitar that had some damage just before you went on. He said, in fact, this guitar was snapped in half before you guys walked on stage. Is this the truth? And you want to tell a little bit more about what happened?
Well, actually, we're talking about it. We're talking about a broken guitar, right?
Right.
Okay. That wasn't one of Billy's guitars.
Okay.
That was, God, I wish I could remember the fella's name that was playing guitar. He did part of a tour with us, and at the end of a show, he had this great old white Les Paul, and he set it on a stand at the end of a show, and we were walking off stage, and John Tempesta got his foot caught in the cable and pulled the guitar off the stand and snapped the headstock right off of it.
Oh my God.
And I mean, John's mortified, and it's like, okay, guys, let me see what I can do with it. And I literally had this thing. We were overseas with this, and you don't have a whole lot of, when you're doing fly dates like that, you don't have everything you need.
Sure.
I typically tour with at least one, 800-pound workbox full of tools. My workbox is affectionately referred to as Walmart because there's like everything in it. But I've literally got this guitar. I have found some twine in a hardware store, and I've taken out some of the tuners, and I've got the twine through the tuner holes, and I put an eyelet in place of the rear strap button, and I've run the twine through that, and I've got a block of wood on the back of the guitar with a towel wrapped around it, and I'm literally using a drumstick to like twist these pieces of this length of twine to pull the headstock into place because I don't have any wood clamps.
Oh man!
I got glue, and when it was finished, I cleaned up the glue joint, and it was tight enough so that we didn't have to put any paint on it, which was great. There weren't any pieces missing, and got the guitar put back together. And next night we had a show, and it literally sounded better, which is not really unusual because you figure, you break the headstock off of a Gibson, that's the weakest part. You glue it back together, it suddenly becomes exponentially stronger than what it was before it broke. And so, vibrational transfer and sustain and tone usually improve. And this guitar was head and shoulders better after it was fixed than it was before it broke. So
unbelievable. Geoff, is 5-Star taking notes? Is this the repair technique that we're going to use? Is baling twine?
So you're saying I can make this sound better if I just that's crazy. Yeah, but like not having if you were going to take a limited supply of tools, why would you bring clamps? That makes sense.
Yeah. But that's being a guitar maker by trade. I can carve you a guitar from a tree trunk with a cabinet scraper. So people kind of expect me to be able to do things that normally you don't see as a guitar tech. String the guitar, polish the guitar, tune the guitar, make sure the right guys hold it when the song starts. That's a good day.
Yeah.
The whole idea of that's actually the second time that I've done that exact same repair. CC DeVille's dressing room guitar suffered a similar break on a flight, and he brings it to me and literally glued it back together exactly the same way. It was a black neck, so I touched it up with a black Sharpie and replaced the clear with some super glue and sanded it out and polished it with toothpaste, and you couldn't tell that it had ever been broken. And oh boy, you know, you get an artist to smile over a repair like that, where they go, oh my God, my favorite guitar is dead. And with toothpaste, you know, some string and a drumstick and a Sharpie and super glue and obviously wood glue, you know, you make it so that they can't tell it was broken.
Right.
That's the best kind of day you can have.
So. I would imagine that kind of recommendation. I mean, the word of mouth travels fast when the pros are out there and they can hear that you can MacGyver anything like that together. Shouldn't be that much harder to get a job, right?
Well, actually, it's not. There are times where it's not all that great to be me looking for work.
I bet.
First off, you know, the people that I work for, if you do pull off a miracle, they don't want you working for somebody else, so they're not going to recommend you to anybody.
Okay.
And you know, the downside of working for Ed was, you know, when Van Halen didn't tour all that often, but if I was talking to a production manager on the phone about a job, the first thing they want to know is, how much do you make? And I would always just tell them, you don't want to know.
Yeah.
Because it seemed appropriate. It was humorous.
Sure.
But the other part of it, you know, the second question, and the one that was the worst one to answer, was, what are you going to do if Ed calls? And there are a lot of times where I know that I missed work because A, somebody figured they couldn't afford me, and B, they knew that if the phone rang that I was going to go work for Ed. And it made it tough a few times to find work. And thank goodness there have been, you know, the faithful employers that I have worked with that have called and said, are you available? Because we'd love to have you. And the majority of them, 99.9% of them, I'm just as pleased as I can be to go back and work with all of them. So,
folks, if you're watching and you just tuned in and you didn't catch this, the Ed he's referring to is Eddie Van Halen. So Tom was Ed's guitar tech and right up until the end here. And so there have been remarkable experiences that I've seen you share elsewhere. And there's some really telling and touching messages that he passed on to you. One of the things that you guys had in common, right, was that you both endured a cancer run together.
Right.
Right. You know,
well, we did it at different times, and he did it for a longer period of time than I did. But I was diagnosed about 3 weeks after Ed and I met in 1988.
88.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about that first experience that you guys met and how you got the gig?
Well, the gig came a long time later.
Okay.
So it's kind of a twofold story, but I was in 1988, I was the house audio engineer at Starwood Amphitheater in Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay.
And we had Van Halen coming in for a show, and we had heard a rumor that Ed and Al had been wrestling around the bus at one point, the little sibling rivalry thing. And the only casualty was an Ovation classical guitar that was Ed's bus guitar, or, you know, there was a rumor at one point that it was possibly the guitar that he played Spanish Fly on, but I don't think that that's true.
Okay.
But, you know, I had recently traded my way into a bunch of musical equipment that included a white Ovation steel string guitar, a real nice guitar. It still had the tags on it, but it wasn't it wasn't me. I didn't have any use for it. And I literally had zero money in it. And I thought, I'm going to give this to Ed. And it seemed like a good idea at the time. And I wanted to, Ed and I had a couple of mutual friends back in the day. He was a new Kramer guitars endorsee, back when, and I worked for a Kramer dealer when I was younger, and we knew people. We both knew people at the factory. Dennis Berardi, president of Kramer back in the day, and there was a story that he knew one side of, and I knew the other side of, and I wanted to have a chance maybe to share my side of it. And so I went to our head of our promotions director, a fellow named Robert Eva, and told Robert that I wanted to give this guitar to Ed, and asked him if he could see if he could arrange for us to meet, which he did. And the day came, October 4th, 1988, Van Halen shows up. We had a great day. They played an amazing show. And afterwards, I went and found Robert, and we went back to the dressing room area, and Robert knocked on the dressing room door, and the door opens. He steps inside for a minute. Door opens again, and out he comes, and here's Ed. And I don't remember who was with Ed at that point, but I was focused on meeting him. So, yeah. And the conversation was a little confusing at first, because as we're introducing ourselves to one another, he looked at me, and I'm holding this Ovation guitar case, and he said, you represent Ovation. And I said, no, sir, I don't. And he looked at me kind of baffled a little bit, and he said, this is your guitar. And I said, yes, it is. And he said, and you want to give it to me? And I said, yes, I do. And he looked at me, kind of stern look on his face, and he leaned in and he said, why?
What's the catch?
And I said, well, I said, we have a couple of mutual friends, and I said, there's a story that you know one side of, and I know the other side of it. I was hoping to have a chance to share it with you. And he brightened up, and he said, well, come on in, and it was really kind of interesting. He made a comment to the effect of, everybody in the world wants something from me.
Yeah.
And he said, you're honestly the first person that I can remember that doesn't want anything other than to just sit and talk to me. So we went in the dressing room, and he sat down and pulls the guitar out of the case. And the first thing he does, I'm sitting 3 feet from the man, and the first thing he does is he breaks into Spanish Fly.
Oh my God.
And it's like, oh man, yeah, this is the coolest. This is the coolest moment of my life.
Yeah.
And the evening went on. We sat up until 3:30 in the morning playing guitar and drinking and cussing our wives and having a great time. But the story that I had to share with him, and I'm sure you guys are probably versed in Ed's guitars. Do you remember the yellow and black double neck guitar?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That guitar was originally being built for me. And Ed didn't know it. Nobody knew it. It was in process when Ed became a Kramer endorsee. And I had been talking to Dennis Berardi about it and keeping up on the progress with it. And one day I called Kramer, and I asked for Dennis, and he answered the phone, and I said, Dennis, just calling to check up on my guitar. And he said, well, Tom, let me get you with Tony Costello. He's our new artist relations manager, and he can tell you all about it. And I'm on hold for a second, and Tony comes on. He said, Tony Costello. I said, Tony, Dennis says that I need to talk to you about my double neck. And he said, well, you can see it in this month's copy of Life magazine. And I said, well, I was kind of hoping to see it in my music room,
Yeah.
but and he said, well, he said, Eddie Van Halen has been at the factory, and we've been talking with him, and putting together some guitars with him, and blah blah blah, this, that, and the other thing, and I finally just stopped him. I said, okay, what you're going to tell me is that you've given my guitar to Eddie Van Halen. And he said, well, yeah. And I said, well, you know what? If it was anybody else on the planet, I'd probably be really unhappy. But I get it. And I said, I guess the question is, when do we start another one? And he said, well, we don't. And it's like, well, that was kind of a kick in the behind. And I said, okay, obviously why? And he said, well, part of our deal with Ed is that anything that we make for him, we can't make for anybody else. And I thought, okay, so, but the good part about that is that from that point on, anytime I called Kramer, no matter, what music store I was working in, I eventually went to work for Rhythm City Music in Atlanta, running their guitar department. And it was kind of nice because, right in the middle of, hair metal, and everybody wanted a Kramer guitar with a Floyd Rose on it. And there were some of them that you had to wait 6 months to get. And I was one of the only guys that could pretty much get whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. 6-month backlog on a white Kramer Beretta with a maple fingerboard. Okay, let me make a phone call. And yeah, I can have it to you tomorrow.
Wow.
And it was cool.
Yeah.
It was very cool.
Good juice to have.
All these years later, I became a guitar technician. The whole time that I was an audio guy, never gave one thought to being a backline guy.
Okay.
And I wanted to be a sound guy. And I came off the road. My son was, he was 4, maybe 5. And I wanted to stay home for a while and watch him grow up a little bit, kind of have some input into his life. And so I came home and I opened a guitar repair shop. And, 3 years into it, I got a voicemail message from a fellow that was the production manager for Blessed Union of Souls, a fellow named Scott Griffith. And Scotty left me a voicemail one day. He said, looking for a guitar tech, wondered if you might know somebody. And I thought to myself, you know what? I could carve a guitar from a tree with a cabinet scraper. I bet I could do that. And I called him. I got his voicemail and said, let me know the particulars. I might be interested. About an hour later, I got a call back from him, and he said, dude, I never thought we'd get you. He said, it doesn't pay enough. He said, let me call the guitar player and see if he's okay with me calling the record label, and let's see if I can put something together. A couple hours later, he called and he said, we'll hire you. And the rest is history. I've been a guitar tech ever since, and I guess I'm good enough at it to I'm good enough at it so it's stuck. So
yeah,
there we are.
That time that you mentioned with Ed's October of '88, I remember seeing the band Monsters of Rock a couple months before that on that tour. I was a young punk in Montana, and I think Geoff was busting around Boise, Idaho at that point as well. And we I remember driving over, and I'd seen Van Halen prior, but that particular event was pretty remarkable. As a drummer, I've always felt like Alex Van Halen was so underrated when it came to that band, because I feel like Alex, in the scheme of things, is as talented, as innovative, as incredible as Ed is on drums. And it just happened to be that Eddie had this remarkable gift that people recognized first, and he, it overshadowed the talent with Alex. But and Alex didn't seem to really care whether people knew about that or not. But I saw the same thing that everybody did, in that moment when the Monsters of Rock tour, one of the biggest tours of the world, watching Eddie command the stage without trying. It was so natural to that guy. shortly after
He
that's
had
when you
so
met.
much fun doing it. That's the
Yeah.
thing.
He was smiling always.
Always.
Yeah. And so tell me, like after that first meeting, then you mentioned the Blessed Union of Souls gig to start playing guitar or tech and guitar. But how did
Yep.
how did the job with Ed come along?
Well, first off, let me finish the 88 story real
Okay,
quick.
cool.
As we are parting company, um, Ed asked me. He said, is there any Kramer guitar? He said this is really an amazing gift. This Ovation guitar. He said, is there any Kramer guitar that I could give you in return? And I said, well, honestly, I have 17 Kramer guitars. I said, I think the only one that I don't have is a Paul Dean signature model. And, just kind of laughed it off. And he gave me his contact info, and he asked me for mine. And I went on about the rest of my night about 3 feet off the ground, and probably, for the rest of my life, I'll never forget that night. But about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks later, the UPS guy shows up at my house with a box, and in it is a yellow and black stripe Kramer Paul Dean, which will be at 5 Star Guitars this week.
That's the guitar.
And across the front of it. Yeah, I know it's there now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we haven't listened, but we opened the case. Like we were checking it out in the back. Yeah, it's amazing.
Wow, that's the guitar. That's the one that Ed sent you. Oh my God.
That's the one that Ed sent me.
Wow.
And across the front of it, it says, "Thanks, Tom, a lot. I owe you one, Edward Van Halen." And the silliest part about the whole thing, that guitar is going up. It's going up on consignment with 5 Star because I have to.
You bet.
Breaks my heart. It is absolutely my life's most precious possession, shy of my family. But I didn't notice, to give you an idea of how Ed was with details. I just in passing mentioned this, Kramer Paul Dean was one of the only Kramer guitars I didn't have, and just kind of jokingly. And we got into this position because I wanted to share with him the story about a yellow guitar with black stripes. And I got a yellow guitar with black stripes from him. It's a Kramer Paul Dean signature model. But the stupidest part about the whole thing is it was about maybe a month ago that I realized that the guitar was yellow with black stripes, and so was the double neck. And that's why the guitar is yellow with black stripes.
That's so
I didn't even think of it until, now.
Sure.
Holy crap.
Oh my God.
He was that in tune with what we were talking about, just hanging out in the dressing room. Who was I?
Right.
But he paid attention to everything about that conversation and every detail about that situation. And oh man, what a testament to the mind that was, Ed Van Halen.
Amen.
Just in tune with everything. So,
it says a lot about him, but it says a lot about you too, right? Because had you not had the energy, the fact that you came in and didn't want anything from him, but were able to offer him, some camaraderie, the guitar, when everybody else is asking for something, that says a lot about you and Ed's trust in you, which is probably more why you stuck with him that way, in his mind.
Yeah. Well, it was, that's been an experience that I will never forget. And, while we were parting company, he gave me a big hug and a kiss on the cheek. And he said, Tom, there aren't very many people like you in this world anymore. He said, everybody wants something.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm just being me. And who knew that was the day that started everything. You fast forward, you fast forward to 2007, and I'm on tour with Poison and riding on CeCe's bus, and we're rolling down the road. And do you guys know Adam Reaver?
I don't. Geoff?
Okay. Adam has a fu.tone or fu-tone.com.
Okay.
Floyd upgrades. He does
Oh, yeah,
titanium upgrade parts for Floyd Roses. He's got boogie bodies. He's got his own line of guitars. He was partners with Ed in the D-Tuna.
Wow.
And one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet in your life. And he called me up on the bus. CeCe and I had been kind of beta testing a lot of his titanium parts, and just having a great time with him. And he gave me a call one day as we're rolling down the highway and said, you're going to get a phone call. See, when you for years, when you talk about Ed Van Halen, you talk about Ed's right hand guy. That would be Matt Bruck.
Okay.
And Matt was Ed's guitar tech for a long time, and he handles a lot of Ed's business, a lot of the EVH brand business. And he and Adam they were in junior high school together. They played hockey together when they were kids, And Adam told me that, Matt had called him and that Van Halen was in production rehearsal, and they were on their, I think, third guitar guy. And it wasn't working out. And Matt asked Adam, if he had any names. He said, well, I can give you 5, but I'm going to give you 1 because it's the only one you need. And when I hung up the phone call, it was, I was a little taken aback. And by the way, the noise in the background, we have a 55-pound lab in my house and a 6-pound Yorkie.
Oh, nice.
And the Yorkie has decided that he's going to pester the lab. And so you may hear him in the background. So
they like to be on camera. I know. I've got a pug that likes to be part of the show. So
I don't know if he even knows what a camera is, but he likes to know that he's in charge.
Oh, of course.
There's no question about it.
You bet.
When I explained to CeCe DeVille what the phone call was, and it was hilarious because, I've kind of developed, people that know me know that I like to imitate CeCe.
Oh, let's hear that.
And after I finished telling him this, what the phone call was, he said, Tom Weber, if you pull this off, next year you'll be able to tell them what color bus you want to ride on. And I have to insert that CeCe is one of my very favorite people on the planet.
Fantastic.
I love him like he's my own family.
Okay.
And I can hardly wait to get back on the road with him. But and we have so much fun.
And supportive of that decision, obviously. That
Yeah.
Yes,
Oh yeah.
Take the Ed gig. Okay. I like hearing that. You mentioned riding on CeCe's bus. I think at that point, and still, they all have their own buses, right? Isn't that one way that relationship stays together?
It's more comfortable that way.
Sure.
Some band members want to travel differently than others, and it always seems to work best when everybody has their own bus.
Yeah.
And I can't complain too much.
Yeah. As long as everybody gets there in time, right? So, man, Geoff, I know that there were tech questions that you talked about wanting to ask. So throw him Tom's way. I know he loves talking it.
Yeah, when you mentioned earlier that as part of that deal with Kramer that nobody would make the same guitar for anybody else, I'd never heard that. I mean, so anyway, it was fascinating. And as it turns out, Adam, I think I met him through NAMM, and we were talking about it. Like and we were able to ask him all the questions about like how he came up with the idea. And, you know, he told us that he had like a sort of a handshake deal with Eddie, and that Eddie had
Yeah.
always taken care of him, and that they,
Yep.
you know, and he just told us all these like crazy stories that you'd never get, you know, from just the marketing materials, you know, just about like how that
Oh,
deal
yeah.
went down. So yeah, we're super excited to have you in here.
I can hardly wait.
I looked at that the guitar today, and we were talking about it. We were all standing around it. You know, it's in
Right.
the photo booth, and we're getting ready to take pictures of it. So we pop it open, and we were just looking at it. And so I wanted to ask, like, the black stripes that are on it, they look like they're maybe vinyl or something?
Probably.
Do you think, like, I mean, he probably just had the Kramer guys do it, but it crossed my mind, like, do you think he actually put those on there? Like
Yeah,
Eddie Van Halen put them on there?
You know, I don't know, and I never asked. You know, obviously the guitar was in Ed's hands because he signed it, but where the stripes came from, I don't know. You notice that the guitar doesn't have a back plate on it, and that's
Yeah,
the
we
way
were
I got it
checking
as
that
well.
out too.
So
Yeah.
it's only been out of the case a half a dozen times since I've owned it. I think I took it on 3 New Year's Eve gigs, and I think I played Old Lang Syne on it 3 times, and that's
Wow.
the only time it's ever been plugged in.
And you tried
So
not to touch the face of it so you wouldn't like wear off
yeah,
the marker.
I mean, it's like I said, it's been my most cherished possession, and I never wanted anything to happen to it. You know, it was always something. You know, in the beginning, it was something that I could show to someone if I had um, to show that, you know, I wasn't telling a lie about meeting Ed in '88 and, you know, sitting and playing guitars with him and all of that stuff.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know, you don't think it is, you know, you don't think what I said is true. Well, here, take a look at this. It's like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, okay. But, you know, now the world being what it is, you know, there's between 17 and 20 million of us. And by us, I mean guys that do, you know, guys that tour. We basically found our lives, you know, disappear. Not just, you know, it wasn't just the job, because this is not just what we do. This is who we are.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
it's not like you can just climb off a tour bus and go, you know, get a good paying job, you know, in a corporation someplace, which is where you'd almost have to go to make good enough money to cover, you know, what you're used to making if you're busy. So it's you know, that the motivation for this guitar going up for sale is a serious deal. You know, I have to choose having an incredible yellow and black stripe guitar from Ed Van Halen, or this is a joyous occasion. It's going to be fun, but it's also a somber reminder of the condition of the industry that we rely on at this point. And it's, you know, it's kind of it's one of those situations where here we are. What do you do? Whatever you have to.
It's a noble thing. I mean, as a father, as a grandfather, as a business owner, I understand, you know, that role. And so, folks, if you're watching this in the chat, you're not a musician. If you, there's not a person on the planet that has not been affected by the coronavirus, first of all. And so as musicians, as someone who's dependent, you know, there were, you know, close to 100 gigs that I had to cancel this last year. There's more than the economic fulfillment that it gets lost when we're not out there playing. That is a way of life. It's what we feel as, it's not only fulfilling, but there's an identity behind it. Right. So I'm speaking for myself, but I think I could speak for several of us to say that when there's a serious identity crisis, that when everything that we know to be what we value, what we represent goes away, it's beyond economic in terms of devastation. It also can really mess with mental health. You look at what lies down the road. This podcast started from conversation with our guitarist who's in Toronto. And we said, hey, we did a Facebook Live conversation where we said, this thing might last 2 or 3 months. So what are we going to do? And now 16 months later. Right. But, but I understand how, when it gets down to it, you as a family man, you've got memories, you've got what I would say are beyond assets. And there are two things that I want to point out here. Number one, there is a GoFundMe set up for Tom here, guys. If you're watching this, I'm going to put a link below. This link, tinyurl/Tom Weber VH. If you go to that, there's a longer URL that it will take you to. And this is an opportunity for you to be able to help Tom sustain this so that he can get back out there doing what means everything to him and his family. Now, the second thing, I'm sorry.
I'd like to explain that GoFundMe a little bit as well, because it's really easy to say, well, this guy's been touring and working and blah, blah, blah. How does he find himself in this position? And that's a difficult thing to explain in a short period of time, but I'll do my very best here. This isn't a single event, and like the situation is for a lot of people, the pandemic isn't the only thing that influences what happens to a lot of people. Back in 2016, I was touring with Neil Schon from Journey, and at one point I owned what I pretty much figure was one of the largest guitar repair facilities in the United States here in Cincinnati. I took up about a third of a 44,000 square foot building. Wow. There's 5,000 square feet of wood shop and spray room and repair center and all of this stuff. And a friend of mine owned the building, and I'd been in there. I'd been working on this shop since it was, a desk, a chair. I could carry all my tools in one hand, and I had the wood to build my first workbench. And about 26 years, I had my own place. And I'm on the road with Journey, and my buddy has an audio company. He's moved into a larger building from this building that I've been in, and his business continues to grow, and he has to buy a larger building yet. So now he's looking at his third building. And this place is, a couple 100,000 square feet, I think. And in order to buy that building, he had to sell the other two. So for a year, there's a guy coming in looking to buy the building, and I think he was from New York. Came in periodically, brought people in to measure things and figure out what he was going to do with it, yada yada. And, the whole time he's telling me, Tom, don't want you to leave. Not going to change your rent. Interested in what you do. Big Van Halen fan. Maybe my partners and I can invest in what you're doing, and you can come home and, live out your dream in this building. And I'm thinking, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And, we had some incredible conversations in that direction. And 48 hours after they took possession of the building, I get the first email saying, yeah, you've got 30 days to go from, we want you to consolidate to 4,000 square feet. Yeah, I've got a week and a half before I have to be in Japan with Journey, and I've got to consolidate this huge space down into 4,000 square feet. How in the heck is that going to happen?
Right.
So it was pretty much a matter of, I couldn't move, couldn't sell. It took every minute of my time before I had to leave for Japan to consolidate the most necessary things into 4,000 square feet. And The rest of it I donated to charity.
Wow.
And I watched 11 tractor trailers full of my stuff go to Habitat for Humanity. And I got on an airplane and went to Japan. I got home from Asia, and the next day I get an email saying, yeah, we've decided that, that space that you're renting, with utilities and this, that, and the other thing, we figure it's going to be about $9,000 a month. And now that you're the only remaining tenant in the 44,000 square foot building, you get the building maintenance too. And it's January 2017 at that point, and the estimated gas bill for the boiler to heat the building was $35,000, which they expected me to pay. I was like, I'm taking up 4,000 square feet. Why are you expecting me to pay to heat the whole damn building when there's nobody here? And so we had 19 days at that point to vacate the building. And I scrapped 10.5 tons of machinery and fixtures and watched 8 20-yard dumpsters of my personal property go to a landfill, and packed up what I had left and moved it out of there and into storage and into my basement. And that's the way it's been ever since. And the future that I had planned for when I came home, 26 years worth of work, disappeared. And follow that up by a couple of, fair years, not good, 17, 18, 19, they were okay, but nothing to write home about. And I figured 2020 was going to be probably the largest year of my life, professionally. And it was going to be the busiest that I was going to be. There wasn't going to be any downtime between tours. So I had to figure out how to duplicate tools and work boxes and things. So I thought, big pay year coming up. I can afford to go out on a limb and duplicate tools. And I was in Nashville rehearsing with Reba McEntire when the whole COVID thing came down. It's like all of it went away. It went to absolutely zero. And when you're staring down the barrel of, now I've spent more money at the beginning of this year than I wanted to, and now there's nothing coming in, and you can't get a hold of unemployment. We're not entitled, because the push has been for stagehands, touring stagehands, to be employees over the past number of years. We're not eligible for any of the PPP loans that the government put out. I'm 63 years old, and I'm certainly not going to start a band and go play in a bar someplace, and you can't. So here we are.
Yeah.
And that kind of explains how we got to this point. And I have known a lady named Sandy Espinoza for years. And she has a nonprofit called roadiecare.com. And she's the one that set up the GoFundMe. I mean, she's literally feeding people that can't feed themselves at this point. And, people don't understand that, they're not aware of what's actually happened here.
Sure.
We wear all black so that we blend into the shadows and the darkness of the stage, so that you don't know we're there.
Right. And
the downside of that is that most people don't understand that we actually exist.
Right.
This isn't a matter of, the band shows up with a few guys and they set up gear and they do a show. It's the band shows up with 100 or more sometimes, and you have 180 to 200 local hands every day to set all that stuff up and tear it all down, and it all goes back in trucks, and you do it again tomorrow. There's between 17 and 20,000 or 20 million of us worldwide that just watched everything that we lived, every bit of our lives, just disappear in 2020. And we're watching people take their own lives because they don't know where to go.
Right.
They can't feed themselves. They can't find work. Their state of mind is completely unraveled, and it's costing lives at this point. And that's one of the things that Sandy's trying to address. So if you have a chance, there's also a link to the GoFundMe on Sandy's site. It's roadiecare.com.
Okay.
And check it out, because it's some serious stories about some serious people and the consequences of this thing. I'm not alone, but hopefully by coming on and doing podcasts like this, I can help draw attention to the situation and bring people to a point where if they can help, maybe they will.
Yeah.
And there's my long-winded speech for the day. So.
No, well, I will say,
that's.
I put a link down below to that, because I pointed people to roadiecare.com as well, and bless Sandy Espinoza for putting her efforts and energy into this. And I'm glad that you're making people aware. You're right. People don't often know that there's so much more than the four guys on stage. When you go to buy a ticket to a show, the ticket you're buying is not only lining the pockets of the artists on stage. There's so much that goes into the production.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Just like the music industry. I mean, we've watched, Broadway plays, the New York economy is devastated, right? That all these people that are in live production of any kind has disappeared. And it's one thing to make people aware, but it's another thing also to show the worth, because we've seen that during this time, the mental health of those that are entertainers and performers and part of that entertainment industry is disrupted. But the people that need that, we need live music, we need live entertainment in order to fulfill our, it's not just entertaining, it's culturally expanding. It's like it's bringing your brain to the next level. And so you see people desperate to see live music, and there's certainly you see people that are desperate to play and produce. And so awareness is one thing, being able to support those people so we can get them back out there. That's what this is about. Not only pointing people towards the GoFundMe, because man, could we throw any more speed bumps your way, between, the facility, between the COVID and unfortunately the untimely passing of Edward, your boss, man, your family member. And I am honored that you can share some of these stories and that you can bring such a piece of your history to 5-Star, so that people get to share this piece of his legacy, So can you talk a little bit about what's happening this week at 5-Star, Geoff?
Yeah, let me know what we're doing.
Yeah, right. As soon as I figure it out, Tom, I'll be right with you. We've one of the things that we're going to do right now, we're taking photos and sort of documenting all the provenance that you supplied with that guitar. And we're going to do everything that we can to, get as much money as we can to you, and, and to get something that, get this into the hands of somebody that's really going to appreciate it too, because it's a little piece of history there. It's it was cool just to see it, So, we're on the case with that. And when you're here, we want to try to document that a little bit too, and make that a part of the listing. You provided a bunch of cool stuff. So I'm excited. It will be on our website soon. We just want to make sure that we get it out there correctly. And we're working on trying to do as much press as we possibly can, and not just locally when we talk to those guys, but also like, some big media stuff, and guitar magazines, and we were talking about Rolling Stone, and just all these other publications. I think it's a really interesting story. It's a really interesting piece for anybody, and I think the fact that it's such a worthy cause. I mean, and I totally get it with commercial real estate. That can be brutal, man. I mean,
That's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's. I don't think people realize how much of a tough situation that can be, and how one-sided those agreements can be. And somebody that's just trying to run a small business, doesn't have a lot of control over what happens, regardless of how good a tenant or how long they've been a tenant, you know, and
Yep.
a lot of people don't realize that it's easy to find yourself without a chair when the music stops. So, you know, I'm stoked. I'm stoked just to talk to you about all that stuff. And when we're going to do a live stream from the shop next Friday at
Cool.
2, I think is the time we landed on. We'll send it out. But I really wanted to do a big, like, deep dive into, you know, just gear. And like, there's so many questions that we've got for you about how you were setting up these guitars, how you were setting them up for different people, how you were adjusting things for their playing style.
Sure.
You know, and it's so I'm so excited to have you. We're gonna have you set up some guitars, just some like regular like EVH guitars, just you know, sort of off the shelf, literally off the shelf.
I'll be bringing
and we're
tools.
going to, yeah, we're gonna have you do that. I'm sure that'll get you to set up one of my guitars, like selfishly, just bring in a bunch of stuff, like welcome, here's all my stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, like, we're super excited to have you, and so we're going to be doing that, and just like really sort of gear focused, and really talking about like, you know, just all of your knowledge with doing that stuff, you know, be it repairs, be it you know, regular maintenance, and even building for that matter. I mean, we do a lot of that stuff here, but you know, it's you know, not in the sort of situations that are as time sensitive as yours. Like just that story about fixing the neck with like a drumstick and a piece of wood, you know, like I can imagine how that would be done. And I'm like, oh, you know, and it worked out, you know.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah, man, no, we're super excited. Like, you know, just to have you here in town, we'll hang out, but you know, we'll do a live stream from the shop. And you know, one of the things that we talked to you about, we're going to try to document like a multi-camera shoot to document like how you were setting up Eddie Van Halen's guitars. And that's like a super deep dive, but like we couldn't find it anywhere. So we talked to, you know, I was talking to Tom and I was like, what do you think about like, if we just tried to record this? And he was open to the idea. Right. So I was like, yes, we'll have it. So I'm really excited about that. Well, cause there's some really interesting stuff. And again, it's kind of a deep dive to talk about it, but there's some tuning things that you were doing to sort of compensate for the way that he was playing that are super cool. And I think if we could sort of show that and have you describe it in a way that like would be available to people, I think it would be so interesting. So, you know, we talked about, I was like, yeah,
that story is a big part of that story is a big part of me getting the gig with Ed, and so we'll get into that.
Man, you know, even as a drummer, right? I mean, some of the guitar sort of memories and feelings that I've had. It's, you know, the interesting thing about Ed, Eddie Van Halen's contribution to music. I will never forget the first time I heard Eruption. You know, I was just a young punk kid who in Montana had no concept of that sound. First time I heard Eruption, it changed my life. I think everybody on the planet could say that. And my kids, especially, you know, my 19-year-old just had Van Halen 1 stolen out of his car, his CD, and more than anything else that he had stolen, he was really devastated because it meant something to him. He grew up, you know, listening to that album. And for me too, like, you know, the iconic solos, man, Mean Street, when I hear that solo and every time I saw the band, it was always the core parts of it, but it seemed like there was a little bit of improvisation that Ed was throwing in there on some of those nights where he was feeling something different. Was I hearing that right?
Well, you know, I think that's one of the things that appeals to people. There it was, the way Ed played was not always flawlessly perfect. Mm-hmm. It was on the edge of everything known about guitar, you know, and there have been people who've taken what Ed did and they may have made it faster, they may have made it cleaner, they may have this, they may have that. But what they've done is made it more technical. They've taken it from the heart and put it in the head. And Ed channeled something out of the universe that nobody else ever will, and it went straight through his heart to his hands to your ears. And I think that's the part that appeals to so many people, is that it's not that it's so blisteringly fast or it's so amazingly clean. It's that it's human. There's a certain warm fuzziness about the execution that says, you know, I'm up here having a really great time. I'm smiling always. And I'm not really concentrating on being perfect. I'm concentrating on having a good time with you.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Van Halen, especially the guitar parts, so much a part of what people feel about the band. Because if it's too much math, it's all in your head.
Sure.
But if there's heart in it,
You bet.
if there's a feel in it, it says something different to every person that listens to it. They all feel something different because of the experience, and they take that home with them. And it's something that's more special than a math equation.
Right.
You know, it's something that Ed said to you through his playing that makes you go, I was right there, and it just went right through me. You know, the next person standing next to you was right there, and it went right through them too. Now, did it mean the same thing to them? Maybe partially, but probably not exactly, because of the fact that it was something that you could understand. And you could never do it. You could never play like Ed, but you could sit there and go, you know, I get what he's doing, and it means something to me. And that's just the way I've always looked at it. And, you know, an awful lot of folks go, you know what? Now that you mention it, yeah. I think that's it. Doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be right.
Yeah.
And if people are digging it, it's right.
You articulated a lot of what art means, you know, in general, right? Somebody can take a look at a painting and interpret it a certain way, but if it touches you and moves you, it's a way that you really can't describe. You know, you can't say that painting means this to me because you feel it, and
Right.
you know, and music, the same thing. What you really touched on, and oftentimes on this show, is that I like to ask about legacy. Now, I don't know that there's a person on the planet, really, I mean, there are very, very few in our history who've developed such a legacy that will stand the test of time. Generations from now, people are still going to be talking about the legacy of Eddie Van Halen. And you were a huge, huge part of that. You've talked about his impact to you. I'm wondering, how is that carried over in your days, Tom, when you look back, you know, you've written your chapters and you're looking back at your life. What would you like your legacy to represent?
Well, obviously, you know, my life represents my dedication to my family, more than anything else. They're the reason that I do what I do. It's not easy being gone. Now, there have been years where I'm home less than a month in a year.
Right.
And I've always said that, you know, I know my wife loves me because she always picks me up at the airport. But, you know, after this whole pandemic thing, we've been under the same roof for more than a year, and she hasn't left me and she hasn't kicked me out. So she kind of likes me too. So
nice. You win.
That, of course, I don't know if it, either that or she's putting on real well, but
yeah.
I would like to think that my life and my dedication to music was important not only to them, but to the people that enjoyed what my artists have accomplished with their talents. To be able to facilitate, you know, an artist going out on stage and having a performance where they don't have to worry about things.
Yeah.
That gives me a sense of accomplishment. It's a testament to who I am. I don't like things to be done halfway.
Okay.
There's a right way to do things. There's more than one right way to do things, but there's an awful lot of wrong ways or half-ass ways to do stuff. And I think I want the testament to my existence to be that I didn't do things halfway. Because if you've done the best you can, what else is there?
Right. That's all you can ask for, man.
Yeah.
Great perspective. Honestly, I'm so honored, to get to share this time with you. I revere what you've done, but even more so, just who you are, getting to know you a little bit, and having watched other interviews, I can see that Tom Weber's got an incredible heart. I can see that's why you mentioned Ed, when you guys had a break, before touring again, you mentioned his words to you. You want to just convey that message?
Well, somewhere I think on my phone, I still have the text message that says, I don't know when we're going to go again, but when we do, you'll be my first call because I'm not leaving home without you. What more can you possibly ask for than that?
That's it. Yeah. Man, what a gift.
We did a show in Atlanta, a festival show, and I ran into Ed and Matt backstage after the show. I'd finished loading the backline truck and was on my way to get a shower, and they were on their way to jump on the bus and leave. And we kind of met in the infield area at this festival, and we were talking a bit. And Matt said that, Ed and I were just talking about it in the dressing room, and we've decided that we don't ever want to do this with anybody but you again. And I thought, that's the testimony to what I've tried to accomplish in my life.
You bet.
That statement right there is the biggest thing that anybody's ever said to me with regard to what I do for a living. And you're not supposed to be proud, but you got to be a little bit. So here I am.
Yeah, take pride in that, man. I mean, you've obviously affected their lives in that way. The fact that you had that impact on Eddie Van Halen, greatest guitarist on the planet, right?
Who knew?
I can't wait for you and Geoff to get together at 5 Star
and
show off that guitar, get that thing sold
Me too.
to the highest bidder. It's going to be quite an experience.
It's going to be a good time.
Geoff, you have anything you want to?
For sure. Yeah. So for next week, it is going to be 2 p.m. So Friday, June 4th at 2 p.m. Pacific, and it'll be a live stream on our Facebook page. If anybody has any questions ahead of time, you can email us at podcast@fivestarguitars.com, and we can take a look at them, see if we can get them answered by the man himself. And let's see. Yeah, I'm just really excited to talk with you more about that stuff, and amps and pedals and just gear, and yeah, I mean, about Billy Duffy and all the other amazing guitar players that you've worked with. I watched an interview you were talking recently, and somebody said, "Oh, you've worked with so many people," and I thought your answer was so cool. Because you're like, "Well, actually, not that many, because they keep calling me back." I thought that was the coolest answer you could have, So
I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, no, that's super cool, So yeah, we're really looking forward to it, and excited to be working with you and just having you here in the shop. So
fantastic.
Yeah, I can hardly wait.
Geoff, man,
I didn't get on an airplane again. First time in over a year that I'm on an airplane and actually going someplace to work on guitars. It's like, yes,
right? Yeah.
You picked a good spot for it too. We're gonna make sure it's good weather for you, and you'll be well accommodated. Awesome. So, Geoff, thank you so much for being here to co-host this, and you
Hey,
and Five
my
Star
pleasure.
Guitars for sponsoring this show, man. It has meant the world to me this whole year. Tom Weber, I can't wait to meet up in person, and we're going to chat about all your contemporaries, man. So many tech, mutual contacts and friends that have great stories about you. So I really appreciate you sharing this time and your heart with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Guys, if you came in late and you missed some of this, I want you to do me a favor. Head over to the link down below, youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin. I will also have this archived shortly at accesskevin.com. We are closing in on the 200th episode, and this one by far is one of the most meaningful to me. So subscribe to the channel and go out there. Not only do you need to check out roadiecare.com, that is honoring a lot of folks that are out there in the production industry, but check out tinyurl.com/TomWeberVH to see his GoFundMe, and then buy Edward Van Halen's guitar at 5 Star Guitars next week. Thank you guys so much for being here. And everybody on the chat, thank you so much for being here as well. Have a wonderful weekend, and